wakati mwili haiko able ku digest that into the system, so there's going to be an issue. In major cases it's going to affect the old age. It also affects children, but mostly in the old age. I think Caleb can start, then we can see what to do afterwards. Caleb.
Hello, good evening.
Good
Good
evening.
evening.
Yeah, I hope you're getting me.
Yeah, we can hear
Yes.
you very clearly.
Okay, so today we're going to talk about diabetes, and I hope, as it has been said, most of us have heard about diabetes, and maybe we know something little about diabetes. So, because time is far much spent, and I know we want to share something little, I like to just go straight to the presentation, so that from the presentation, if anyone has a question or something to add on the same, uh, you can feel free. I hope you'll see the slides. Yes?
Yeah, we can see the slides. Anaweza eka ikuwe slideshow so that it fills the whole space. Although that is also all right. From my end, I can see it clearly. So I think we are good. Or he can actually share it to me so that I broadcast using the computer.
Yes, Val?
But we can begin with the
Yeah,
presentation as is.
it's okay, man. Let me share with you.
All right, quickly so
My
that we can save
my
on time.
laptop is having issues. We can proceed, Caleb.
Yeah, I just want us to wait for the slides, then we proceed. Okay, maybe I can be defining what diabetes is. From our medical school, we can say that diabetes is a lifestyle. It's a lifestyle disease that develops when the body does not produce enough insulin, which leads to uncontrolled levels of sugars, which can be high or low.
The presentation is on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we can go to the next slide. Emmanuel, kindly, you can proceed to the next slide.
You can't stop me if I'm ahead. I'm at slide 8. How diabetes
Slide
comes
8.
about.
I just want you to be at slide 2.
Okay, slide 2. What is diabetes?
I'm not sure whether, because from my end,
Mm-hmm.
I'm just seeing slide 1, the title.
I don't know. Let me double check because Right now, is it changing?
No.
Let me try to change that. Apologies. I think I wasn't okay. What about now?
Yeah. Yeah. It's okay now.
Okay. So we are
Yeah.
at slide 2.
As I proceeded to say, is
Mhm.
that it's a disease that develops when the body does not produce enough insulin, leading to high levels of sugars or low levels of sugars. You can go to the next slide. Uh, for someone to be said that they have diabetes, there is some lab tests which are done. Mostly we take blood from we check your blood for sugar levels, and normally we do say that when you have sugar levels of from 3.9 to around 7.5, that's a random blood sugar, that is normal. But when you have a random blood sugar of up to 11.1, then that is suggestive of diabetes. So what the doctor will do, they will tell you to go home and come back another day when you've not taken anything, and then we'll do a fasting blood sugar. If it's 3.9 to 5.5, that is normal. If it's 5.6 to 6.9, then we say it's prediabetes. Prediabetes, it means that you are in state where if you continue to do what you are doing, you will get diabetes. But if you do some lifestyle modification, you may control it and you may not proceed to getting diabetes. When you have a fasting blood sugar of 7 or more in two separate readings, that confirms diabetes, and you should start diabetes medication. Another test that I did not include here, it's called HbA1c. HbA1c, it's a test that checks the level of blood sugar for the past 3 months. It's also another test that can be used to confirm diabetes, but that let's leave it for another day. Yeah, we can go to the next slide. We see the pancreas. Yeah, here in this slide, I guess you can see the pancreas. The pancreas is what produces insulin. So insulin, it's a hormone that regulates the blood sugars. When you've eaten and your blood sugars have gone up, insulin is produced from the pancreas to reduce those blood sugars. And then if your blood sugars are low, this pancreas still produces some other hormone called glucagon to raise the blood sugars. So for some people, if your pancreas is defective, okay, the pancreas has over 75% of the pancreatic cells, they have consists of insulin. So if your pancreas is defective, you may not be able to produce enough insulin, and that can be one factor that leads to development of diabetes. But before we see how diabetes comes about, I would like us first to get some history about diabetes. We see when did was this disease there from the beginning? When did it come, and what was the stimulating factor that led to increased numbers of diabetes or diabetic cases? So you can go to the next slide and see the history of diabetes. Yeah, so the diabetes was first reported in the 1550s in developing countries. By then, China and India. And by this time, it was known as the disease of the rich, and it was not reported among the poor people. However, between 1550s and 1900, diabetes was not a major concern. But there was a steady increase in the diabetic cases, and so measures of controlling it in the 1900s. Uh, as we proceed, we will see what happened in the 1900s that led to an increase of the number of diabetic cases. So that is worldwide. So we can go to the next slide that talks about diabetes in Kenya. Yeah, so in Kenya, as you can see, from 1959 to 1980s, cases were so limited that they could not guarantee statistics. 1990s, cases were steadily rising. I think you can see by the year 2000, there were only 200,000 diabetic cases. By 2023, Kenya has had approximately 2 million diabetic cases. What happened? Yes, that's a question I want us to be asking ourselves. When did our country get independence? It was 1963. That's when we started copying the Western culture and all that. So we started importing foods. Yeah. And it's a developing country. By the year 2000, I believe most of our, our parents, our grandparents, or most of the people in Kenya were starting getting employed and starting living a sedentary lifestyle. So we'll see how that has an impact in development of diabetes. We can go to the next slide. Yeah, so this is statistics. You can see how low the cases were in Kenya. Uh, on the is this the x-axis where we have people living with diabetes in thousands. So as you can see, by the year 2000, we had 200,000 people. By the year 2021, we have there 800,000, and there is a steady increase. So by the year 2045, it's projected that these cases will continue rising steadily. Why? Because Kenya is a developing country. Most of us are continuing on studying. We are moving to a sedentary lifestyle. Everyone wants to work in offices. Everyone wants to own a car and drive and all that. Yeah. And which kind of foods? Helen, kindly you can mute. Okay, thank you.
I'm proposing, man, we need to start working on like
Yeah,
meal
so
nutrition.
as I
Like,
was
for
saying,
example, I think
the
we should
cases are
like
expected to be rising steadily because of the
in a week.
lifestyle that we have adapted.
So
Uh,
start working on
we
deadlines.
can
You know,
move to the next
where
slide so that we get into
like
the
at the end of the
details
deadline,
of how
let's start
diabetes
with
comes about. And I
24 hours.
believe
At
as
the end
we'll
of the
be
deadline,
understanding
we
how
have 35,
diabetes
35
comes
days to
about, we'll today we'll just
complete.
dwell on
I missed the
one
slide.
thing that is
It's ongoing.
very pivotal in controlling diabetes. So we can move to the next slide.
Yo, bro. Yeah, nakusikia but I'm in a meeting. I'm in
Manuel,
an online meeting. There's a group in mental health. We usually have like sort of meetings.
Manuel, kindly
So I'll
proceed
be
to the
back.
next slide. Yeah, how diabetes
I'll
comes
call you. I'll call you.
about. So, from this image that is presented on the left side, as we are looking at your screen, we have the liver, we have the pancreas, which we said is responsible responsible for producing insulin, and we have glycogen. Glycogen is a form of storage of starch, and then we have blood glucose, and then back to the liver. So this is what I want us to understand, that the pancreas want us to understand the relationship between glycogen, that is, glycogen is a form of fat that consists of starch. Okay, let me explain this. When you have eaten and your body produces more sugar than you need, your pancreas will produce insulin to reduce that level of sugar. So for insulin to reduce these sugar levels, it stimulates a process by which this glucose is converted into glycogen and then it's stored in the liver or muscles. The upper part where it's named liver and glycogen, you can see that this form of glycogen can be stored in the liver, and this part down there, they've drawn something like a muscle. So glycogen can be also stored in muscles. So, and then when the blood sugar is low on this other side of on the right side of your screen, as you're looking on your screen, the pancreas produces an hormone called glucagon, which which stimulates a process by which the glycogen which was stored, it's converted back into glucose, and then the blood sugars are raised again. So what happens when the pancreas is defective? It cannot be able to produce insulin. So it means the blood glucose will be at a constantly high level because the pancreas cannot be able to produce glucose. So what can make the pancreas not to produce insulin? Number one, we've said uh, when the pancreas is defective. That can be due to genetic problems and such. Number two, you've had something known as insulin resistance. Insulin resistance develops when there reaches a point that if your blood sugars are constantly on a high level for some time, for a long period, these these muscle cells that are storing excess glucose in form of glycogen, they say that the glycogen I've stored is enough. And then there reaches a time that the liver is also fed up of glycogen. So when the liver is fed up of glycogen, even if you produce insulin, the glucose will not be converted into glycogen. So with the time, the pancreas will be producing insulin that will not be utilized by the liver. That is in converting glucose to glycogen because you already have enough fats. So that will make the pancreas not to be able to produce insulin. And so with time, you'll have a problem because uh, what is called insulin resistant, it happens at the cell level, that is in the muscle cell or the liver cells, because they say that we have enough glycogen, we don't want more glycogen. So because we don't want more glycogen, the pancreas cannot produce insulin. That is what is called as insulin resistance. So that is the most common type of diabetes that we have, that is type 2 diabetes, because of our lifestyle. So how does lifestyle contribute contribute to diabetes? How does lifestyle contribute to diabetes? I will still explain that using this slide. As I have told you, when you eat high amounts of sugars, these sugars will be converted into glycogen. And this glycogen is a form of fat that will be stored in the liver or in the muscle cells. When this glycogen is enough in the liver or in the muscle cells, these muscle cells will say that we don't want more glycogen. And then they will tell the pancreas not to produce insulin. That is the body's control mechanisms working together in place to bring about the thing that we were learning in high school called homeostasis. Okay, so how does our lifestyle contribute to such circumstances? You can bear witness. Yeah, kindly let's still go to the other slides before we come to this one. Yeah. Uh, you can bear witness that most of the diet in in our country or in most places consists of a lot of starch. You wake up in the morning, the first thing you do, you take some tea and bread or something consisting of starch. And then lunchtime, you can take rice that is still starch and something else. And then in the evening is the time that most of us take ugali. And then now, here is where we have a problem. When you take heavy supper consisting of ugali and a lot of starch, you are going to sleep. You will not be doing any work. So, starch is a combination of many molecules of glucose. So when you eat this a lot of starch in the evening, it will be broken down into glucose and you will have more amount of glucose in your blood. So your pancreas will produce insulin so that this excess glucose will be converted to glycogen. So you'll have some form of fat stored in the liver or in the muscle cells. The next day in the morning, when you'll be waking up, again the first thing you'll do, you'll take your breakfast, you take your tea and bread, and the cycle continues. So day in, day out, there is some amount of glycogen that is stored. There is some amount of glycogen that is stored in the muscle cells or in the liver. And with the time, it will accumulate and reach those levels that the muscle cells and the liver cells will start producing that resistance towards insulin because the liver will be already be fed up with glycogen. So how does this bring about diabetes? It's because your body has had enough glycogen and it does not want more glycogen. Because it does not want more glycogen, it will tell the pancreas not to produce insulin. Now insulin is seen as enemy because it's the one that is giving this liver glycogen. Are we together? Yes?
Yeah, we are together. I'm following. I think everybody else is following. I'm actually
Yeah.
intrigued by the conversation, the things you've put forth. I'm actually like sitting back and thinking. So yeah,
Yeah.
we are following.
Yeah, thank you, because I've seen some likes, because that is a very important part in controlling diabetes. The more we eat heavy supper, that is in form of ugali and other starch, the more we continue accumulating glycogen as a form of fat in our liver or our muscle cells. And the liver will say that I don't want any more glycogen, and the muscle cell will also say, I don't want any more glycogen. And that will make the pancreas not to produce insulin. So what happens when the pancreas does not produce more insulin? The next day and the next day, when we'll be eating more glucose, this you will have sustained high levels of glucose in your blood, and that is what we call as diabetes. So what the doctor will do, we will give you medications. We will give you medications to go and reduce the blood sugar levels. These medications, some of them stimulate the pancreas to produce insulin, and others directly reduce the blood sugar levels because they have insulin in them, like in the insulin that one is injected directly into the system. So that will go to directly reduce the blood sugar level. What else does the doctor tell you besides you using medications? Anybody can answer that?
avoid sugar. Avoid sugar. Then yeah, I think usually it's avoid come at something like tea. Then be eating more natural sugar, something like that. I
Mhm.
hear most people are
Mhm.
told that.
Yeah. So most people are being told to avoid sugars. Anyone who is told to do exercise, are we also told that the doctor will tell you, besides using medications, avoid sugars and follow a particular diet. So I want us to see some foods that contribute to diabetes or have a strong link to diabetes, and we see how they relate with diabetes. Uh, from the presentation, okay, let me tell you one. Yes. Let me tell you one thing. We can go back to the previous slide so we understand what this as we continue. Okay, so now that we've understood how diabetes comes about, we can all agree that there is a problem when we eat heavy supper. Yes? Are we in agreement? Yes, anyone?
I think in
Is there a problem when we eat heavy supper? Yes,
you
Emmanuel?
you have established that when you were talking about consistently eating a heavy meal at night, especially one full of glucose, and I think heavy supper you kama it's like githeri, the the ugali,
Mm.
the heavy foods that I cannot sleep without eating chapatis, something which has a lot of carbohydrates. Yet, say somebody's just going to sleep. I think I took note of that.
Yeah, so when we'll be continuing, we will see now for those who have already reached these levels that they have this insulin resistance, how are we going to reduce this amount of glycogen that is already stored in the liver and in the muscle cells so that we can reverse the process? So that once again, the liver can have some room for more glycogen so that the muscle cells can have the more room for glycogen. We will see what usually interferes with this normal cycle. Sometime as we go on, we will refer back to this slide. Yes. Uh, we can proceed. The link with diet and common foods that cause diabetes. Okay, as we saw from the history is that by 1980s we did not have issues with diabetes in Kenya and all that, but Kenya has been importing processed food for the last 50 years. That is refined sugar. We have wheat, and as you can see, wheat was hybridized since the 1950s. We will see the impact of that and how it contributed to an increase in diabetes cases. And then we have also dairy meals, caffeine, and all that. The wheat products, we have chapati, bread, mandazi, cake, biscuit, and you can agree that everyone or most of us, a day, it's not easy for a day to go without using the wheat products. Uh, So for today, we will learn something that I'm sure it might shock some of us, but that is the bitter truth, and we will see some evidence that we cannot be able to deny. Yeah. So the next slide, kindly. Can move to the next slide that talks a little story about wheat. So before 1950s, we have we had the First World War, which was 1914 to 1918, then 1920, and then we had the Second World War that was in the 1940s. You can see the aftermath of war. In most cases, it's famine. As you can see, the war between Russia and Ukraine, we see even the war in Israel and Gaza, we see the effects of famine, and we can feel them. So the same story after the Second World War, there was a increased number of cases of famine, and people tried to look for solutions on how they will be able to address this problem. So they found out that if they change the form of wheat, uh, I think we will share these slides later so that we can go and also do more research about the same. They change the form of wheat from amylopectin B to amylopectin A to give more yield. Like the original wheat, we will see an example of original wheat as we go by. One of them was called spelt. Spelt is a type of wheat that had this form of starch that is amylopectin B. Amylopectin B and amylopectin C, there are some types of starch which do not produce high amount of sugars. But amylopectin A produces high amount of sugars. At this time, this was not an issue because the immediate issue that was to be addressed was a famine. So the effect of changing this form of starch resulted by increasing yield by tenfold. Like uh, if you are harvesting from some place 1 sack of wheat, after changing this form of wheat, it was realized that you could harvest even 10 sacks. So more yield to just address the issue of famine. But foods with this kind of starch, that is amylopectin A, they have a high glycemic index. Glycemic index is a value that we use to measure the amount of sugar released into your blood and how it is sustained in the blood system. The way our body was created is that when you eat some food, it should be able to produce uh, some amount of, you should be able to raise your blood sugar levels slowly and consistently over a long time, over a long period of time. Like if you've eaten breakfast, you should not be able to feel that hunger even up to after like 8 hours, because the food that you ate, it's producing sugars in a slow but very consistent manner. These kind of foods that usually do that mostly are legumes. You can bear witness that if you eat something like ground nuts in the morning, they have starch. And that kind of starch that they have, you may not be able to feel hunger for the larger part of your day. And unlike you eating bread in the morning, if you take tea with bread, you may eat a very large amount of bread for you to not feel hunger for the larger part of the day. And the reason why you will not feel hunger, it's because most probably you will be bloated. But if you take the right amount of food, like with temperance, you will feel that you are full. But after like 2 hours or 3 hours, you feel again, you start feeling hunger. So this form of starch was corrupted, and that made wheat to have a high glycemic index that is releasing amount of sugars in a very in a it led to, when you eat wheat, your blood sugars will rise within a very short period of time, and then they will also fall down within a very short period of time. Like it cannot be able to sustain you for a long period of time. Yes, so what are the foods that have this high glycemic index? I have told you this example of diabetes, of this example of wheat. Uh, there is one thing that I wanted to mention. You can bear witness that when we go to hospitals, what the doctor will usually tell us is that go and eat brown bread, that is whole wheat, brown chapati, and all that. But when people have been doing that and there is no change, and there is something that people usually say that insanity is doing something for doing the same thing for a certain period of time, you are not seeing change and you continue doing that same thing. uh for me, since I'm in the health field, at some point I was also advising people to take whole wheat, but after realizing some things, I had to stop telling them to take whole wheat or any type of wheat, because as we'll see in the next slides, wheat has a glycemic index of 72, whole wheat. Some books term it up to 80. Yes. Uh, the normal value of glycemic index for any person, the food that you eat should have a glycemic index that is less than 55. Especially for diabetics, they should not take any food that has a glycemic index of that is higher than 55. That is considered to be a high glycemic index. So whole wheat has a glycemic index of 72. So it's not really advisable for people who are diabetic. So as I was saying, is that in the past days, and I believe there are some doctors up to this day who advise patients to take whole wheat. It's because uh, they don't know this fact that the form of wheat was changed. As we continue with these slides, we'll see that if you want to take wheat, which type of wheat are you supposed to take? I took some pictures and we will see them. And if we are doubting this information, we can, yes, just go to that next slide. There is this book that was written known as Wheat Belly by Dr. William Davis. Dr. William Davis, he did medicine and surgery. He was a cardiologist for some time, and he was also treating patients with diabetes and patients with heart issues. You can bear witness that most of these heart patients who have heart conditions, they also have obesity. He came to realize that he is one of those people who who first established this link between wheat and diabetes and also obesity. Because this wheat has a high glycemic index, when you eat, most of it is converted into glycogen. And as we saw earlier, the more you eat more starch, more glycogen, the more glucose will be converted into glycogen, and there is a time that your liver and your muscle cells will say that it's enough, we don't need more glycogen. Uh, most most people are obese because they are taking this whole wheat, and they don't know that most people blame it for like you've eaten a lot of meat and all that, but you don't know that some people are just obese because they are taking high amount of starch and especially this wheat. So if you have some money and you want to read that information in detail, you can buy that book. You From this slide you can see its price tag. You can get it from Amazon. It's number one bestseller in New York just because of that information it contains, and people who have implemented that, it has helped them. Okay, for me, I you see, when you get some information, you advise to a patient when we've learned something new to do what you think is right. So for me, I was advising some patient that we've been telling you that you take brown chapati and whole wheat, but I don't think it's good. So now that, because this patient had their own uh, glucometer is that machine that is used to to measure the blood sugar levels. They used to She used to check her blood sugar levels after taking food, and she confessed that she had realized that when she has taken whole wheat that is in form of brown chapati, the sugars are usually higher than the days that she has taken other types of food. So that alone was a confirmatory claim to what this book was saying. So for me, one of the advices I'll be able to give is that for any patient that is diabetic, just advise them to avoid wheat completely. You'll go and check the glycemic index of whole wheat, and you will see that it's very high, 72, 80, and that's not good for a patient who has diabetes. Yes, we can go to the next slide. Okay, this is Norman Boulage. This is that man who was responsible for converting that form of starch in wheat from amylopectin B to amylopectin A to address famine. But diabetes uh, came as a side effect of that, of his act of converting amylopectin B to amylopectin A, like increased number of cases of diabetes. As we saw, uh, the number of cases in diabetes were elevated in the 1900s. And as you can see, by 1970, actually the exact year it was 1976, that this man, Norman, was awarded a Nobel Prize for converting the form of starch of wheat to address famine. That process had started in the 1950s. So that was one of the contributing factors to increased number of cases of diabetes, because this wheat has dangerously high levels of sugars, that is starch. So you can see this information, we cannot be able to just despise it, because you can bear witness that when you go to the supermarket, most of the food products that you'll be able to buy, they will be formed from wheat. That is bread, glue, we have a biscuit, Weetabix, and everything. Most of them are made out of wheat, spaghetti, and all that. And we have seen the problem with wheat. As we proceed, we'll see the options or the foods that we are going to take in place of wheat. Yeah, so how to control and prevent diabetes, because this is what we all want to hear. As we have seen, diet has a very direct implication in our glycemic index and also how we control our diabetes. So for that, we are going to take foods that have a low glycemic index. Preferably, that's a glycemic index, foods with a glycemic index that is lower than 55. And then we can do exercise. We'll also see how exercise impacts diabetes. And then we can also take medications as guided by your doctor. So I'll not go into details in this, because every patient is given a specific type of medication or a certain dose depending on how they are controlling diabetes and how and the severity of this diabetes at the point of diagnosis. So we're almost finishing the presentation. So the first thing we said, the first point is foods with the low glycemic index. As you can see in this presentation, there is a glycemic index chart with some snacks and their glycemic index, and also some starch foods and their glycemic index. Okay, I don't want to mention each food here, but when you go to starch, you can see the glycemic index of wheat bread. It's there around 8. Pancakes, they are made from wheat, you can see it's 67. You can see brown rice, it's 55. This says that white bread is 49, but some charts will tell you that white bread has a glycemic index of 67, 62. So one thing that I will tell you about this glycemic index, do not, you can Google. Do not use just one chart as these ones, as the one that I've just posted here, because every nutrition organization has their own glycemic index. So what you do, you can Google foods and their glycemic index, look for charts, and you can compare. If you get that two or three more charts say that uh, wheat bread has a glycemic, if one chart says that wheat bread has a glycemic index of 80, another one says 72, another one says 75, you can unanimously agree that that food has a high glycemic index of around 70 to 80. But if you get one chart saying that white bread has a glycemic index of 49, and another chart says that white bread has a glycemic index of 62, another chart says white bread has a glycemic index of 60, another one says 59, you will go with the 59 to 67 range and leave alone the one saying 49. So just go and Google, and you can prepare, even you can make your own list by seeing the foods that has the common, by comparing the common ranges. If you see that three or more charts suggest a common range, just choose that range. Yeah, we can go to the next slides and see those foods that we can suggest for people with diabetes. When you tell them not to take wheat, you have to give them an option. Okay, these are some of the options. We can take a brown rice, arrowroots, that's a nduma, and then we have green banana, that's unripe, because the ripe one, the glycemic index has gone high. So the cooked banana, preferably if you can be able to take it with the peels, it's okay, because some people cook it with peels. And then for fruits, you can take oranges, apples, pears, guavas, and I see what I did not include in this list is legumes also, and vegetables. This, most of them have for legumes, as we said earlier, most of them have starch that is called a type of starch that is amylopectin C, and that is the best type of starch. So for diabetic people, actually, there's some there's some doctors who go to extreme levels of telling patients to restrict, to completely avoid like brown rice and those form of starch, and survive only on legumes and vegetables. But as we should be able to do evidence-based practice, I don't see a point of telling a patient not to take brown rice when this brown rice has a glycemic index of maybe 40 something. You see, it's still safe for that patient. For most legumes, their glycemic index ranges from 15 to 21. These legumes examples are lentils, dengu, and then you can also take nuts and seeds, that is ground nuts, macadamia nuts, and all that. So those are also good for patients with diabetes. Yes, we can go to the next slides for the foods to avoid. Yeah, for the foods to avoid, you can see, as we have said, brown bread, cakes, soda, donut, biscuit, chocolate, tea, coffee, pineapple, watermelon, dates. Okay, pineapple, they have a glycemic index of 67. So for me, a normal person, I can be able to take it. But for diabetic patients, that is not safe for them. Watermelon, it has a glycemic index of 72. So that is not good for one to take. Dates, a glycemic index of like 100. So it's not good for a diabetic patient to take. This just leave it for normal people who are not yet victims of diabetes. And you can continue with the list as you go and Google. Just see those foods that have a glycemic index or that is higher than 55. You should avoid those foods. Yeah, so I will share a suggested diet plan for diabetic patients in our group, and for those who have attended this presentation, we'll also, I think the host will be able to know who has attended, and will and they will, and if one has attended and is not in the group, I think there is a way they can get that suggested diet plan for diabetics. I had told you that we had an original form of wheat. As you can see in this picture, there is wheat that is called spelt flour. Spelt, they were two, spelt, and another one is known as kamut. But the one that can be found up to these days, because it has been able to be preserved, it is spelt. So this flour is very expensive. As you can see, if you want to take wheat, go and buy this spelt food. You can find it in these big shopping malls like Carrefour, and you can also find it in health use stores. Health use stores, you can, I believe when you Google health use stores, you can get the points where you can get them. They are mostly in these shopping malls like Garden City Mall, Thika Road Mall. Yeah, if you go and check, you can find this spelled flour. You see, 750 grams goes at 650. When we buy this normal wheat, 2 kg, you buy it at 180, 190. But this 750 grams, you buy it at 649. You see, white spelled flour, this is from a company known as Dove's Org, 1 kg, 1,200. Can you compare this with the normal wheat that we have? This one is very, very expensive because it has that original value. And you can see for another company, 680 grams, it goes at 900. So for those who still want to take wheat, for diabetic patients who still want to take wheat, these are the type of wheat that they can be able to take. But you can see the cost implication. For me, it's not advisable to still go and search for them because of the cost implications. But if you have money, you can tell them that if they want to take wheat, that is the one they should go for. Yeah. And there are some people who are interesting because when you tell someone not to take some food, just give them alternatives. So there are some people who have gone to look for alternatives, that they have even created banana flour. You can go to the next slide. Next slide, kindly, Emmanuel. Yeah, we have banana flour, that is Stawi banana flour. This one also has a low glycemic index. Yeah, next slide. You see banana flour. It can also be used to make chapati and all that. And you can also see its cost. 1 kg, 635. Yeah, so you should choose, will you take arrowroots, or you go for the spelled flour, or you go for the banana flour. It is your choice. But the main point, foods with low glycemic index.
I think Caleb has had a bit of network interference. but I suppose we must be loving the conversation so far. Personally, for me, I'm following through, and for a moment, I'm just soaking it in. Take note that this is being recorded, so I'll be sharing it as a link after the meeting, because I was so excited I started recording because it was that wonderful. So Caleb, you can continue. We were just I was just speaking so that I can fill up the time.
Yeah, okay, I'm sorry for that technical itch. Yeah, so the other way to control diabetes, I think we have tried to exhaust about diet, and as I promised, I will share a suggested meal plan for diabetics. Yeah, and that meal plan, you should really discuss it with your doctor. Yeah, because different patients should we should have different, or I can say customized approaches to different patients, because this disease affects each patient uniquely. So the meal plan that works for one patient may not be the one that works for the other patient. There can be some modifications that can be done. So for exercise, mm, we usually suggest a high intensity exercise for 20 to 30 minutes in the morning before you do anything. We said that the problem is that most of us have been taking heavy meals wakati wa supper, and so when we get to 40s 50s, already the body is fed up with the glycogen that is being stored whenever we go to sleep, and now the pancreas has had reduced insulin sensitivity because of the insulin resistance. Yeah, so for us to make this pancreas to have insulin sensitivity again, we need to reduce the amount of glycogen in the liver and also in the muscle cells, so that the insulin has work to do, like to convert glucose into glycogen once again. So the thing that we should do to break or uh, deplete the glycogen stores in the liver and in the muscle cells, when you wake up, the first thing you should be able to do in the morning, you should be able to do devotion and also take warm water, a glass of warm water, and then now do this high intensity exercise. High intensity exercise, it can be sprinting, that is before you eat anything. It can be sprinting, it can be push-ups, anything that will be is comfortable. But for it to be high intensity, you have to do it as fast as possible for around 15 to 20 seconds, and then you rest for like another 1 minute, and then you do that exercise again for 20 seconds or 30 seconds, depending on your, how can I say, on how you tolerate that exercise. So for it to be high intensity, for me, what I usually tell most of the patients is that you really need to sweat when you are doing this high intensity exercise. The push-ups, as I said, you do them as fast or as quick as possible within 20 seconds. Sprinting, you should sprint like, acha tuseme like umanyala, like you are running, it's like you are being chased by a lion. You see, like you are running 100 meters. You can take 15 seconds or 20 seconds to run 100 meters and then rest and then run again. Do that like for like 7 cycles. You see, that will break up the glycogen stores in the liver, because when you wake up, you've not taken anything. And for you to do this exercise, you need glucose. So, in other words, while telling the body, I'm desperate for glucose. What the body will do, it will tell the liver to convert that glycogen back into glucose. Even if the pancreas is not functioning well, there are other hormones that, okay, we have only one hormone, that is insulin, that converts glucose into glycogen, or that reduces the amount of sugar levels in the body. But we have like 5 hormones that raise the blood sugar levels, like they convert glycogen into glucose. We have glucagon, we have a cortisol, we have a growth hormone, and we have catecholamines. So that is just to tell you that even if the pancreas is not functioning well, when you do exercise and you've not taken anything, the body will find means to produce glucose to sustain you during that glucose. The advantage of this type of exercise is that you will deplete the amount of glycogen in the liver and in the muscle cells, and then by doing that you will increase the insulin sensitivity. This we studied in even in physiology books, that the resulting insulin sensitivity following exercise can last up to 16 hours. This is equivalent to the insulin sensitivity that results from taking diabetic medications, because some of them can produce this sensitivity for 12 hours. That's why you take diabetic medications in the morning and also in the evening. So that is how important exercise is. So for a diabetic patient, what we suggest is that when you wake up, the first thing, do some devotion, do take some warm water, and then do high intensity exercise. And then after that, you can be able to eat your breakfast. Eat heavy breakfast that has low glycemic index. We usually say that you should take some small amount of carbohydrates, and then vegetables, and then legumes. Yeah. And then during lunchtime, you can also do the same, some moderate amount of food, that is carbohydrates, vegetables, and legumes. And then for supper, just eat food that has minimal amount of carbohydrates, that is starch. So for me, I usually advise patients, diabetic patients, that for supper they can only take legumes and vegetables. Like someone can take lentils with some vegetables like cabbage, and then with carrot and all that, so that you do not have to take food that will tell your body again to convert that glucose into glycogen, because at this point we are trying to solve that problem of insulin resistance. Yeah, I think that is what I had prepared. As I promised, I will share some suggested diet plan for diabetics in our groups, and I believe we will all get them. So thank you for listening to me, and now we can go back to the host.
Val, are you presenting something?
Good evening once more. Okay, Caleb ameangalia vitu mingi. Actually, he has touched almost everything. What I wanted to share is just it's brief and it's just more whatever he has said. So I don't really have to repeat. Let me share the type of test we talked about, the objectives. When somebody has diabetes, there's a likelihood that this person is going to have seizures, fainting. Then the fact that the person is diabetic, if the diet is not monitored, then they're going to have high dependency on drugs. So another objective will be to reduce drug dependency. Another one is to maintain a normal working, prolonged life, a normal working life, then prolonged life. Because if the person is diabetic, then they're dependent on drugs, they're going to have seizures, fainting, so they're not going to have a prolonged life and a normal working state. And another thing is to cut drug and associated event cost, where the person has to buy the drugs and everything. So even though the foods are expensive, better to buy the drugs, the food, than to be more dependent on on drugs. Then another one is improvement of the patient psychological health. Avoid meals that could lead to rise in sugar levels. Then the carbohydrate that these people can eat are like arrowroot, yams, cassava, brown rice, cooked bananas, or we can have the cooked bananas with peels. Then vegetables, you can have infusions because you have to suggest something that your patient is going to be able to have. They can eat eggs, cabbage, green leafy vegetables, carrots, mushrooms, cucumber, fruit in season, but they have to avoid watermelon because the sugar index is higher. But the rest, guava, apples, avocado, mangoes are good. Then proteins, then nuts, lentils, kidney beans, peas, green grams. So that's all. Carbohydrates should be minimal or avoided. Frequent hydration, 30 minutes before or after dinner. Um, Both animal and plant proteins are encouraged. Vegetables and fruits highly recommended. Sugary food should be avoided or minimal once in a while. So that's what I had to share. It appears that I'm in a very busy place and it is noisy. I hope you can bear with me. That's what I wanted to share. Yeah, that's what I wanted to share. I shared a link for our group in the chat. For whoever who is not in our group, you can join. Then we are going to share the recording of this event. We are going to share Caleb's notes and my notes too. Mika, I think you can proceed from there.
Yeah, I hope everybody's hearing me because I've tried to speak since we started, and because no one is here.
Mika, we can't hear you.
Hi.
I can't hear Mika. From my end I can hear him. So Mika, you can
Oh,
just
you can
continue
hear me.
speaking. I can hear you clearly.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I was actually saying that.
Mika, we can't hear you.
Val, check your audio. Probably from your end, there's a problem from your end. Apart from Baraka, is there anybody who's having difficulties in hearing me?
Mika tukupati.
I think
Though I
Valentine,
can
can
see
you
you're
hear me?
trying to talk.
Can you hear me, Valentine? I'm guessing it's
Mika,
Valentine's.
send us a chat.
I think it's Valentine's end which has a problem because she can't also hear me from what I can tell. Maybe you just text on the platform and then